The morning sun cast long shadows across the Naval Special Warfare Command training facility in Coronado, California. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos walked through the gates with her gear bag slung over her shoulder, her Army uniform crisp despite the early hour. At 28, she had already earned respect as one of the military's finest marksmanship instructors, but today she found herself in unfamiliar territory. The joint training exercise between Army and Navy Special Operations had been months in the planning. Maria's commanding officer had specifically requested her participation, knowing her reputation for turning average shooters into expert marksmen. What he hadn't told her was that she would be the only woman among 60 elite Navy SEALs for the next 2 weeks. As she approached the main training building, Maria noticed groups of SEALs gathering in the morning light. Their conversations died as she passed, replaced by curious stares and whispered comments. She kept her head high, knowing that first impressions in the special operations community could make or break a career. Inside the building, she found the administrative office where Colonel James Morrison sat behind his desk, reviewing training schedules. Morrison was a legend in SEAL circles, a man who had led countless missions and earned more decorations than most soldiers could dream of. His graying temples and weathered face spoke of decades spent in the world's most dangerous places. Staff Sergeant Santos reporting for duty, sir, Maria said, snapping to attention. Colonel Morrison looked up from his papers, his expression neutral. So you're the Army marksmanship instructor they sent us. I have to admit, I was expecting someone different. Maria maintained her professional demeanor. I'm here to provide whatever support the training exercise requires, sir. Right. Morrison stood and walked to the window overlooking the training ranges. We have a very specific program planned for these SEALs. Advanced combat shooting scenarios, stress shooting, moving targets under combat conditions. These men have been through some of the toughest training in the world. Understand, sir. My experience includes training special forces units in similar scenarios. Morrison turned back to her, his eyes skeptical. I'm sure you're competent with standard Army training protocols, but this is different. These men shoot at distances and under conditions that would challenge the most experienced marksmen. Maria felt the familiar sting of doubt that had followed her throughout her military career. I'm prepared for whatever challenges the training requires, sir. Tell me, Staff Sergeant, Morrison said, settling back into his chair, what exactly did your commanding officer tell you about this assignment? That I would be providing marksmanship instruction and evaluation during a joint training exercise, sir. I brought my complete curriculum and training materials. Morrison chuckled, a sound that held no warmth. Marksmanship instruction. I see. He picked up a file from his desk and flipped through it. Your record shows you've trained regular Army units, some Rangers. Impressive, I'm sure, for standard military requirements. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Maria had heard it countless times before, that her achievements were adequate for regular forces, but not for the elite. She had spent years proving herself, only to face the same assumptions again and again. Sir, if I may, I'd like to review the training objectives and ranges available. I believe I can contribute meaningfully to the exercise. Of course you do. Morrison closed her file. Here's what I think would work best. Why don't you observe the first few days? Get familiar with how we do things here. Maybe assist with basic weapon maintenance, help with equipment setup. The SEALs can show you some of their techniques. Maria's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. With respect, sir, I wasn't sent here to observe. I was assigned as an instructor, and I'm sure you'll learn a great deal that you can take back to your regular units. Morrison's tone had shifted to dismissive. These men operate at a level that requires specialized training. I can't have someone unfamiliar with SEAL protocols potentially compromising their preparation. The door opened behind Maria, and a tall SEAL officer entered. Lieutenant Commander Jake Rodriguez was Morrison's second in command, a man whose reputation for tactical excellence was matched only by his fair-mindedness. Colonel, the ranges are set up for morning qualification. The men are asking about the training schedule. Morrison gestured toward Maria. Rodriguez, this is Staff Sergeant Santos, our Army observer for the exercise. She'll be watching our training methods. Perhaps you could show her around, explain how we conduct advanced marksmanship training. Rodriguez looked between Morrison and Maria, sensing the tension. Actually, sir, the men were asking about the additional marksmanship training that was scheduled. Some of them are interested in improving their long-range precision. Right, yes. Morrison seemed to remember something. Staff Sergeant, the SEALs do have some basic training requirements to maintain their qualifications. Perhaps you could handle that. Standard qualification courses, basic weapons safety reviews. Nothing too advanced. Maria felt her professionalism being questioned with every word, but she maintained her composure. I'd be happy to assist with any training requirements, sir. However, I should mention that I've developed some advanced techniques that might benefit the team. I'm sure you have your methods, Morrison said with barely concealed condescension. But these men train with moving targets at extreme distances under simulated combat stress. They need instruction that matches their operational requirements. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. Sir, if I may, some of the newer team members could use work on fundamentals. And several of the veterans mentioned interest in precision shooting techniques. Morrison waved dismissively. Fine. Staff Sergeant, you can work with whoever wants basic review. But I want to be clear, the primary training will be conducted by proven SEAL instructors who understand our operational needs. Maria nodded, though inside, she felt the familiar fire building. Understood, sir. Should I report to the range officer? Rodriguez will show you to the basic qualification range. Start there, see how it goes. Morrison had already turned back to his paperwork, effectively dismissing her. As they walked toward the door, Rodriguez spoke quietly. Staff Sergeant, for what it's worth, several of the guys are curious about your background. Word is you've got some impressive scores on your record. Thank you, sir. I'm here to help however I can. Outside the building, Rodriguez stopped. Look, the colonel's a good man, but he's old school. He's protective of his SEALs, sometimes to a fault. Don't let it get to you. I appreciate that, sir. I've dealt with skepticism before. I bet you have. Rodriguez studied her for a moment. Tell me straight, what's your experience with precision shooting? Maria considered her answer carefully. I hold several military marksmanship records, including long-range precision. I've trained special operations units in advanced techniques, including stress shooting and moving target engagement. My last assignment was developing new training protocols for extreme distance shooting. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Records? What kind of records? Army record for precision rifle at 1,200 meters. Second place finish at the International Sniper Competition. Highest qualification scores in my training command for 3 consecutive years. Jesus. Rodriguez stopped walking. And Morrison wants you teaching basic qualification? Apparently so, sir. They reached the training ranges, where groups of SEALs were preparing their weapons and equipment. The ranges stretched across several acres, with targets at varying distances and configurations. Maria could see immediately that this was a world-class facility, equipped for the most demanding training scenarios. Hey, Rodriguez, called out a burly SEAL with sergeant stripes. This the Army instructor we heard about. Gentlemen, this is Staff Sergeant Santos. She'll be working with anyone interested in marksmanship training. The sergeant extended his hand. Mike Thompson, good to meet you. We don't get many visitors, especially Army. Pleasure, Sergeant Thompson. Another SEAL approached, younger and clearly newer to the team. Ma'am, I'm Petty Officer First Class Williams. I heard you might be able to help with long-range shooting. I've been struggling with consistency past 800 meters. I'd be happy to work with you, Maria replied. Thompson grinned. Williams here thinks he's a sniper, but he couldn't hit the broadside of a ship at distance. Everyone starts somewhere, Maria said diplomatically. More SEALs gathered around, their initial curiosity overcoming any reservations. These were professional warriors, and they recognized expertise regardless of its source. The questions came quickly about technique, equipment, training methods. Staff Sergeant, said a senior chief with 20 years of service visible in his bearing. What's the furthest confirmed shot you've made? 1,847 meters in training conditions, 1,340 meters in field conditions. The group fell silent. Those were distances that challenged even the most experienced snipers. Bullshit, said a voice from the back of the group. Petty Officer First Class Danny Torres pushed forward, his expression skeptical. No offense, but those are competition-level distances. You're telling us you can outshoot trained SEAL snipers. Maria met his gaze steadily. I'm telling you what my recorded distances are. Whether that translates to your training environment remains to be seen. Torres, ease up, Thompson warned, but Torres continued. I mean, come on. We've got guys here who've been shooting professionally for a decade. You really think some Army instructor is going to show us something we don't know? The challenge hung in the air. Maria felt the weight of every gaze, the familiar moment when she would either be accepted or dismissed. In her experience, there is only one way to handle this situation. Would you like to find out? She asked quietly. Rodriguez sensed the shift in atmosphere. Gentlemen, let's focus on the scheduled training. But Torres wasn't backing down. Actually, sir, I think that's a great idea. How about a little demonstration? Nothing official, just a friendly comparison. Show us what Army marksmanship looks like. Thompson shot Torres a warning look, but the idea had taken hold. Several other SEALs nodded agreement, while others looked uncertain about challenging an instructor. Torres, that's enough, Rodriguez said firmly. Maria raised her hand. It's all right, sir. If Petty Officer Torres would like a demonstration, I'm happy to provide one. Seriously? Torres grinned. All right then. What do you say we make it interesting? Standard SEAL qualification course, plus some distance work. Winner buys drinks at the base club. Torres, you're out of line, Thompson said, but several other SEALs were already voicing interest. Maria looked at Rodriguez, who shrugged. Your call, Staff Sergeant. It's not official training, so I can't stop it. The crowd of SEALs had grown, word spreading quickly through the morning training groups. Maria realized this moment would define her next 2 weeks, and possibly her reputation in the special operations community. All right, Petty Officer Torres. What exactly did you have in mind? Torres's grin widened. Simple. Standard qualification course first, handgun, and rifle at standard distances. Then we move to precision work, 600, 800, and 1,000-meter shots. Best overall score wins. And if I decline, then I guess we'll know what Army marksmanship is really worth. The challenge was unmistakable. Maria looked around at the faces surrounding her, some curious, some skeptical, some openly antagonistic. She thought about Colonel Morrison's dismissive attitude, about the years of proving herself again and again. You're on, she said. The cheer that went up from the SEALs surprised everyone. Rodriguez shook his head, but couldn't suppress a slight smile. All right, if we're doing this, we're doing it right, he announced. Standard range, safety protocols. Thompson, set up the qualification course. I'll observe and keep score. As the SEALs scattered to prepare the ranges and gather equipment, Maria checked her gear bag. She had brought her personal weapons, a custom .45 caliber pistol, and a precision rifle system that had served her well in countless competitions and training exercises. Torres appeared beside her as she checked her rifle. Nice weapon. Custom job. Some modifications. Nothing that wouldn't pass military specifications. Right. Torres hefted his own rifle, a standard-issue SEAL sniper weapon. Hope you're ready for this. These guys don't go easy on anyone. I wouldn't expect them to. As Maria prepared her equipment, she noticed more SEALs arriving at the range. Word had spread quickly, and what had started as a small group was becoming a significant crowd. She spotted Colonel Morrison in the distance, talking with another officer and occasionally glancing toward the range. Thompson approached with a clipboard. All right, here's the deal. Standard handgun qualification first. 50 rounds at varying distances up to 25 meters. Then, rifle qualification. 40 rounds from 100 to 500 meters. Finally, the precision work Torres mentioned. Sounds fair. Rodriguez called for attention. Listen up. This is an informal demonstration, not official training. Standard safety protocols apply. Anyone not participating needs to stay behind the safety line. As Maria took her position at the first firing line, she felt the familiar calm settle over her. The noise and distractions faded away, leaving only her, the weapon, and the target. This was where years of training and natural ability came together. She had faced skepticism before, but never in front of an audience this critical. Navy SEALs were among the most elite warriors in the world, and their respect had to be earned, not given. The morning sun was climbing higher, casting sharp shadows across the range. Maria checked her pistol one final time and looked downrange at the targets that would determine whether she spent the next 2 weeks as a respected instructor or a tolerated observer. Behind her, she could hear Torres telling another SEAL, "This should be interesting. Let's see what happens when Army confidence meets Navy reality." Maria smiled to herself. She had heard variations of that challenge her entire career. Today, she thought they might be in for a surprise. The pistol qualification began with basic accuracy at 7 meters. Maria stepped to the line, her .45 caliber weapon feeling comfortable and familiar in her hands. Around her, the morning chatter of SEALs had quieted to respectful observation. Even Torres, who had initiated this challenge, watched with professional interest. Rodriguez called the commands. "Shooters, you have 60 seconds for 10 rounds. Magazine loaded, weapon holstered. On the command, commence firing, draw, and engage." Maria's breathing slowed automatically. The target downrange appeared crisp and clear in her vision. Years of training had taught her to block out everything except the fundamentals: sight picture, breathing, trigger control. Commence firing. Her draw was fluid and practiced. The first shot broke clean, followed by 9 more in rapid succession. Each shot felt perfect, the trigger breaking at the exact same point, the recoil driving straight back without disturbing her sight picture. She finished with 15 seconds remaining and holstered her weapon. Torres, shooting beside her, had finished just seconds later. Both targets showed tight groupings in the scoring zones. Clear and safe. Rodriguez called, "Targets coming up." When the targets were retrieved, murmurs ran through the watching SEALs. Maria's 10 shots had created a single ragged hole in the center of the bullseye, with the widest spread measuring less than 2 inches. Torres's group, while excellent by any standard, spread nearly 4 inches. Jesus, don't be so motivated. That's some shooting. The next stage moved to 15 meters, then 25 meters. At each distance, Maria's groups remained impossibly tight while maintaining impressive speed. By the time they finished the pistol qualification, even Torres was looking thoughtful. "How long you been shooting?" he asked as they prepared for the rifle portion. "Since I was 12. My father was a competitive shooter." "It shows." Torres checked his own rifle, a precision weapon that had served him well through 2 deployments. "Rifle works different, though. Longer shots, wind effects, more variables." "True." Maria shouldered her rifle, checking the scope settings. But the fundamentals remained the same. The rifle qualification began at 100 meters. Maria had modified her rifle over years of competition and training, a free-floating barrel, custom trigger, and glass that had cost more than some soldiers' monthly pay. But she knew that equipment alone never made a marksman. Rodriguez established the firing order. First stage, 10 rounds prone supported at 100 meters. "You have 2 minutes. Maria dropped into the prone position, feeling the familiar comfort of the shooting stance. Through her scope, the target appeared close enough to touch. She controlled her breathing and fired her first shot, watching through the scope as the bullet struck dead center. The subsequent 9 shots followed in a steady rhythm. Maria's technique was methodical and precise, the same sight picture, the same breathing pattern, the same trigger control that had won her numerous competitions. When the targets were scored, the result drew surprised whistles from the watching SEALs. All 10 of Maria's shots were contained within a circle smaller than a quarter. Torres had shot well, but his group was nearly twice as large. "Damn," said Williams, the young SEAL who had asked about long-range shooting. "I've never seen precision like that." The distances increased progressively, 200 meters, 300, then 500. At each range, Maria's performance remained consistently exceptional. Her group stayed tight despite increasing distance and wind effects. More importantly, her shooting showed the kind of mechanical precision that comes only from years of dedicated practice. By contrast, Torres, despite being an excellent marksman by SEAL standards, was beginning to show the slight variations that separate good shooters from great ones. At 500 meters, his groups had opened to nearly 6 inches while Maria's remained under 3. The crowd of watching SEALs had grown throughout the morning. Word of the impromptu competition had spread through the training facility, drawing instructors, and students from other programs. Colonel Morrison stood at the back of the group, his expression unreadable. "All right," Rodriguez announced. "That completes the standard qualification. Outstanding shooting by both participants. Now we move to the precision portion." The precision range extended to over 1,000 meters, with steel targets placed at 600, 800, and 1,000-meter lines. This was where SEAL snipers proved their worth, engaging targets at distances that challenged even the most skilled marksmen. Thompson had set up spotting scopes at each firing position, while other SEALs prepared to observe target impacts and call corrections. The morning wind had picked up slightly, adding another variable to the challenge. 600 meters first, Rodriguez called. 5 shots each. Best group wins this distance. Maria settled behind her rifle at the 600-meter line. Through her scope, the target appeared significantly smaller but still clearly defined. She took several minutes to study wind conditions, watching grass movement and mirage effects through the scope. Torres was already in position, his breathing controlled as he prepared for his first shot. The distance represented the far edge of most combat engagements, where precise shot placement became critical. "Shooters ready?" Rodriguez asked. Both competitors signaled their readiness. Maria fired her first shot, immediately following the bullet's impact through her scope. The shot struck just left of center, wind effect. She made a small adjustment and fired again. This shot struck dead center. Through the spotting scope, Thompson called out, "Center hit, Staff Sergeant." Torres fired his sequence with professional competence, each shot well-placed, but showing the slight variations that become magnified at distance. His group, while certainly adequate for combat purposes, lacked the mechanical precision that Maria was demonstrating. When they moved to 800 meters, the challenge increased significantly. At this distance, small errors in technique or judgment became major misses. The target appeared much smaller through the scope, and wind effect had more time to influence bullet flight. Maria took extra time for this sequence, studying conditions carefully before firing. Her first shot struck slightly high, an indication that she had misread the range slightly. She adjusted and sent 4 more shots into a group that could be covered by a silver dollar. Torres worked methodically through his sequence, but the increased distance was revealing the limits of his precision shooting experience. His shots were combat accurate, but showed the kind of variation that separated tactical shooters from true precision marksmen. 1,000 meters, Rodriguez announced as they moved to the final firing point. At this distance, even professional snipers considered a man-sized hit challenging. The target appeared tiny through the scope, and environmental effects became critical factors. A slight breeze could push a bullet several inches off target. The watching SEALs had grown quiet, recognizing they were witnessing something special. Many of them had attempted shots at this distance during training, and they understood the difficulty involved. Maria spent nearly 10 minutes studying conditions before loading her rifle. She watched grass movement at various points downrange, studied mirage effects through her scope, and calculated wind corrections based on years of experience. Her first shot at 1,000 meters struck just outside the bull's eye, close enough to be lethal in combat, but not up to her personal standards. She made a slight adjustment and fired again. This shot struck center. The third shot also struck center, followed by 2 more that grouped tightly around the point of aim. When the sequence was complete, all 5 shots were contained within a circle smaller than a coffee cup at 1,000 meters. The silence from the watching SEALs was telling. They had just witnessed shooting that exceeded anything most of them had seen, even from their most experienced snipers. Torres completed his sequence with professional competence, but the comparison was stark. His shots were scattered across a much larger area, still accurate enough for combat purposes, but lacking the precision that Maria had demonstrated. Rodriguez walked downrange to confirm the final targets while the competitors cleared their weapons. When he returned, his expression showed professional respect mixed with amazement. "Gentlemen," he announced to the gathered SEALs, "we've just witnessed some exceptional marksmanship. Final scores show Staff Sergeant Santos with perfect qualification scores and precision groups that exceed current SEAL standards at all distances." A cheer went up from several of the younger SEALs, while the more experienced operators nodded with professional appreciation. Torres walked over to Maria with his hand extended. "Outstanding shooting," he said genuinely. "I owe you an apology and a beer." "No apology necessary," Maria replied. "You shoot well. With some technique adjustments, you could probably cut your groups in half." Torres raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? You be willing to share techniques?" "That's why I'm here." Senior Chief Martinez, who had been watching quietly from the sidelines, stepped forward. "Staff Sergeant, that was some of the finest shooting I've seen in 23 years of service. Would you be willing to work with some of our newer snipers?" "I'd be honored." Williams, the young SEAL who had originally asked about training, approached with obvious excitement. "Ma'am, could you show me what I'm doing wrong at long range? I saw how you were reading the wind. My technique is obviously missing something." "Of course. The key is understanding how environmental factors interact with bullet flight. It's something we can work on." More SEALs gathered around with questions and requests for instruction. The morning's demonstration had transformed Maria from a visiting observer into a recognized expert whose knowledge they wanted to learn. Colonel Morrison approached the group, his expression thoughtful. He had observed the entire competition from a distance, and Maria could see him reassessing his initial judgment. "Staff Sergeant," Morrison said formally, "that was impressive shooting. Perhaps we should discuss modifying your role in this training exercise." "Whatever serves the training objectives best, sir." Morrison nodded slowly. "Why don't you join me in my office after lunch? I think we need to revise our training schedule." As the SEALs began to disperse for the midday break, Thompson clapped Maria on the shoulder. "Staff Sergeant, I think you're going to fit in just fine around here. Most of us have never seen shooting like that." Rodriguez lingered as the others left. "That was remarkable. Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "Combination of competition shooting and military training. My father taught me the fundamentals when I was young, and I've been refining the technique ever since." "Well, you've certainly gotten everyone's attention. Half these guys are already planning to monopolize your time for individual instruction." Maria looked across the range where several SEALs were still discussing what they had witnessed. "Good. That's what I'm here for." As she packed her equipment, Maria reflected on the morning's events. The challenge from Torres had been exactly what she needed, a chance to demonstrate capability rather than simply claim it. In the special operations community, respect was earned through performance, not reputation. Williams jogged back toward her position. "Staff Sergeant, some of the guys are talking about getting together tonight to discuss precision shooting techniques. Would you be interested in joining us?" "Absolutely. Informal training sessions often produce the best learning." "Great. We usually meet at the base club around 1900 hours. As Maria walked back toward the base facilities, she noticed the difference in how the SEALs interacted with her. The curious stares had been replaced by nods of acknowledgement. The whispered conversations had become direct questions about technique and training. Most importantly, she had moved from being an outsider tolerated for political reasons to being a professional whose expertise was valued. The morning's shooting had opened doors that might have remained closed for the entire 2-week exercise. Colonel Morrison's reassessment would likely result in a more substantial training role, but Maria knew the real victory was earning the respect of the SEALs themselves. These were warriors who had proven themselves in the world's most dangerous places, and their recognition meant more than any official assignment. The afternoon promised to bring new challenges and opportunities. Several SEALs had already approached her about specific training needs, from fundamental marksmanship to advanced precision techniques. The initial skepticism had been replaced by genuine interest in learning. As she reached the main building, Maria smiled to herself. The morning had gone exactly as she had hoped, not because she had dominated the competition, but because she had established herself as someone worth learning from. In her experience, that was always the first step toward effective instruction. The real work was just beginning. The afternoon training session began with a larger group than Maria had expected. Word of the morning's demonstration had spread throughout the SEAL training facility, and nearly 30 operators had requested to participate in her precision shooting clinic. Colonel Morrison had personally authorized the expanded training, assigning Maria full access to the advanced ranges and equipment. "Gentlemen," Maria began, addressing the assembled SEALs from various teams and experience levels, Precision shooting at extreme distances requires mastering fundamentals that many shooters overlook. What you witnessed this morning wasn't magic. It was the result of understanding and applying basic principles consistently. Senior Chief Martinez raised his hand. Staff Sergeant, most of us can hit man-sized targets reliably out to 600 meters. What we're struggling with is consistent precision beyond that range. Excellent question. The difference between combat accuracy and precision accuracy lies in understanding error sources and eliminating them systematically. Maria gestured toward the range. At 600 meters, small technique flaws might cost you an inch or two. At 1,000 meters, those same flaws can cause complete misses. She had arranged the training in progressive stages, starting with fundamental position work that many experienced shooters took for granted. Even elite operators could benefit from refreshing the basics that form the foundation of precision shooting. Williams, you mentioned struggling with consistency past 800 meters. Show me your standard prone position. The young SEAL dropped into what appeared to be a textbook shooting stance. Maria observed for several seconds before making her assessment. Good fundamental position, but I can see 3 areas that might affect your precision. First, your support hand placement is creating slight barrel pressure. Second, your breathing technique is forcing you to rush your shot timing. Third, your natural point of aim is slightly off target, requiring muscular effort to maintain sight picture. Williams looked surprised. I've been shooting this way for 2 years. My instructors never mentioned those issues. At shorter ranges, those small inefficiencies don't matter much. At extreme distance, they become the difference between hits and misses. Maria demonstrated the correct techniques, showing how minor adjustments could dramatically improve consistency. Torres, who had been listening intently, asked, how do you identify these problems in your own shooting? Dry fire practice with specific diagnostic techniques. Most shooters practice live fire, which gives immediate feedback but doesn't help you understand why shots go where they do. Dry fire lets you isolate each element of the shooting process. For the next hour, Maria worked with individual SEALs on position refinement. Even experienced operators were surprised to discover technique flaws they had developed over years of training. More importantly, they could immediately see improvement when the corrections were applied properly. Thompson, who had been observing quietly, stepped forward. Staff Sergeant, what about wind reading? That seems to be where most of us struggle at distance. Wind reading is part science, part art, and part experience. The science part can be taught systematically. Maria had prepared a detailed explanation of wind effects that went far beyond standard military training. She led the group to observation points where they could study wind indicators at various distances downrange. Most shooters only look at wind conditions near the firing position, but wind effects accumulate over the entire bullet path, and conditions can vary significantly at different ranges. Using spotting scopes, she showed them how to identify wind signs that most shooters missed: subtle grass movement, mirage patterns, and even dust indicators that revealed wind conditions hundreds of meters downrange. The key is learning to read wind in layers, Maria explained. Near wind affects bullet departure. Mid-range wind has the greatest cumulative effect, and far wind affects final impact. You need to estimate conditions in all 3 zones. Martinez shook his head. I've been shooting professionally for 15 years, and I never thought about wind in layers like that. Most training doesn't go into this level of detail because it's not necessary for combat shooting. But when you're trying to place shots precisely at extreme range, these details become critical. The afternoon continued with practical exercises in wind reading and range estimation. Maria had developed training methods that accelerated learning by focusing on the most important skills first. Rather than overwhelming students with every possible variable, she taught them to master one element at a time. Rodriguez, she called to the SEAL officer who had been participating in the training, try a shot at the 800-meter target using the wind reading techniques we just covered. Rodriguez settled behind his rifle, taking time to study conditions downrange before firing. His shot struck within 2 inches of center, a significant improvement over his morning performance. Outstanding. You see how systematic wind reading gives you more consistent results. The group spent the next phase working on shooting from various positions beyond the standard prone. Maria demonstrated techniques for precision shooting from kneeling, sitting, and improvised field positions that SEALs might encounter during operations. In real situations, you rarely get perfect shooting conditions, she explained while demonstrating a shot from an awkward kneeling position. Learning to adapt your technique to different positions makes you much more effective operationally. Young Williams attempted the same position, his shot grouping much tighter than his earlier efforts. The bone support principles you showed really work. I feel much more stable. As the afternoon progressed, Maria noticed the SEALs were asking increasingly sophisticated questions. These were intelligent professionals who learned quickly when given proper instruction. Their questions pushed her to explain concepts she normally reserved for advanced competitive shooters. Staff Sergeant asked a sniper from SEAL Team 3, "What about shooting in different atmospheric conditions? We deploy worldwide, and conditions vary dramatically." Excellent question. Atmospheric pressure, temperature, and humidity all affect bullet flight, but most field shooting doesn't require precise calculations. However, when you're shooting at extreme range, these factors become significant. She spent 20 minutes explaining how environmental conditions affected ballistics, providing practical methods for making field adjustments without complex calculations. The information went well beyond standard sniper training, but was exactly what elite operators needed for specialized missions. Colonel Morrison appeared during the late afternoon session, observing quietly as Maria worked with his men. She noticed him taking notes and occasionally nodding approval as she explained advanced concepts. Staff Sergeant Morrison interrupted during a break. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment?" They walked away from the training group to a point where they could speak confidentially. "I owe you an apology," Morrison began directly. "This morning, I made assumptions based on limited information. What I've observed today shows expertise that exceeds what I expected. No apology necessary, sir. Skepticism is healthy in the special operations community. Perhaps, but professionalism requires recognizing excellence when it's demonstrated." Morrison glanced back toward the training group. "My men have learned more about precision shooting in one afternoon than in months of conventional training. They're exceptional students. Elite operators learn quickly when given the right information." Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like to modify your role for the remainder of the exercise. Instead of basic qualification training, would you be willing to conduct advanced marksmanship instruction for all teams?" "I'd be honored, sir." "Good. I'll arrange for you to have access to all ranges and equipment. Some of these techniques should be incorporated into our standard training curriculum." As Morrison walked back toward the main facility, Maria rejoined the training group. The SEALs had been discussing what they had learned, comparing notes, and sharing observations. Staff Sergeant Thompson called out, "Some of the guys were wondering if you could show us that shooting position you mentioned, the one for engaging targets while moving." "Certainly. Moving target engagement requires different techniques than stationary precision shooting, but the fundamentals still apply." The final phase of the afternoon focused on dynamic shooting scenarios that SEALs might encounter operationally. Maria demonstrated techniques for engaging targets while moving, shooting from unconventional positions, and maintaining accuracy under time pressure. The key to shooting while moving is understanding that perfect accuracy isn't always necessary, she explained while demonstrating. You need to balance speed with precision based on the tactical situation. Torres attempted the technique, his shots staying within combat effective limits despite the challenging conditions. This is completely different from static range shooting, but the principles you taught still apply. Exactly. Fundamentals are called fundamentals because they work in all situations. The application changes, but the basic principles remain constant. As the training session concluded, several SEALs gathered around Maria with additional questions and requests for individual instruction. "Ma'am," Williams said, "would it be possible to work on some of these techniques tomorrow morning before the scheduled training?" "Absolutely. Individual instruction often produces the fastest improvement." Rodriguez checked his watch. "Gentlemen, we need to wrap up for today. Equipment cleanup, and then evening meal." As the SEALs began securing weapons and equipment, Maria reflected on the afternoon's progress. The transformation in the group's attitude had been remarkable, from skeptical observers to engaged students eager to learn advanced techniques. Martinez approached as she packed her gear. Staff Sergeant, I've been thinking about what you said regarding fundamentals. Do you think you could review our standard training curriculum? Some of these techniques might benefit our regular instruction. I'd be happy to review anything you'd like. Outstanding. I'll arrange for you to meet with our training committee tomorrow afternoon. The walk back to the main facility provided time to process the day's events. Maria had faced the classic challenge that confronted many specialists, proving capability to skeptical audiences who had their own expertise and experience. The morning's shooting demonstration had opened doors, but the afternoon's instruction had established her credibility as an educator. Teaching elite operators required more than just personal skill. It demanded the ability to analyze techniques, identify problems, and communicate solutions effectively. As they reached the facility, Torres jogged up beside her. Staff Sergeant, about that beer I owe you and the apology. Some of us are heading to the base club tonight. Would you like to join us? I'd enjoy that. Great. Fair warning, though, once word gets out about today's training, you're going to have every sniper on base wanting instruction time. Maria smiled. That sounds like exactly what I came here for. The evening promised to bring in formal discussions about shooting techniques, tactical applications, and the kind of professional exchange that often produced the most valuable learning. More importantly, she had moved from being an outsider proving herself to being a valued member of the training team. The real measure of success wouldn't be her own shooting performance, but how much the SEALs improved under her instruction. Based on the afternoon's results, that outcome looked very promising indeed. 2 weeks later, the joint training exercise concluded with a comprehensive marksmanship evaluation that would test everything the SEALs had learned. Maria stood on the observation deck, overlooking the advanced ranges, watching as teams prepared for scenarios that would have challenged them significantly before her arrival. The transformation had been remarkable. Williams, the young SEAL who had initially struggled with long-range consistency, was now hitting targets reliably at distances that had previously frustrated him. Torres had improved his precision groups by over 40%. Even veteran operators like Martinez had refined techniques they had used for years. Staff Sergeant Colonel Morrison approached, carrying a folder of evaluation results. I wanted to discuss these final scores with you before the closing ceremony. How did the teams perform, sir? Morrison opened the folder, his expression showing satisfaction mixed with amazement. Overall marksmanship scores have improved by an average of 32%. Long-range precision scores improved by over 50%. Most significantly, we had 0 safety incidents and dramatically increased first-round hit probability. Outstanding, sir. The SEALs were exceptional students. The credit belongs to exceptional instruction. Morrison closed the folder. I've been in special operations for 26 years. I've seen many training innovations come and go, but I've rarely seen improvement of this magnitude in such a short time. Through the observation windows, they could see the final evaluation in progress. Teams were engaging multiple targets at varying distances under time constraints that simulated operational conditions. The performance was impressive even by SEAL standards. Rodriguez joined them on the observation deck, having just finished supervising the final shooting stage. Colonel, you need to see what Team 4 just accomplished. They engaged 12 targets from 300 to 1,000 meters in under 8 minutes, with a 94% first-round hit rate. Morrison raised his eyebrows. 94%? What was their hit rate 2 weeks ago? 67% under the same conditions. The improvement represented more than better scores. It translated directly to operational effectiveness. In real missions, the difference between first-round hits and follow-up shots could mean the difference between mission success and compromise. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez continued, the men have been asking whether any of your training methods could be incorporated into our permanent curriculum. I've prepared a comprehensive training package, Maria replied. It includes lesson plans, progressive skill development sequences, and evaluation criteria. Everything needed to sustain the training without my presence. Morrison nodded approvingly. Excellent foresight. We'll definitely want to implement these methods systematically. The conversation was interrupted by cheering from the range below. Team 3 had just completed a particularly challenging sequence, with their designated marksman hitting a target at 1,200 meters, a distance that would have been extremely difficult for most of them 2 weeks earlier. Jesus Rodriguez Muterid. Henderson just made that shot look routine. Maria smiled, remembering Henderson's initial struggles with wind reading and position consistency. His improvement exemplified what was possible when systematic instruction met motivated students. Senior Chief Martinez appeared on the observation deck, still wearing his range gear from supervising the evaluations. Staff Sergeant, the final numbers are impressive, but I wanted to discuss something else. The confidence improvement might be even more significant than the score improvement. How so, Senior Chief? These men now attempt shots they wouldn't have tried 2 weeks ago. They understand their capabilities and limitations better, which makes them more effective operationally. Maria nodded. Confidence based on proven ability is one of the most valuable outcomes of proper training. The final evaluation concluded with a ceremony recognizing individual and team achievements. Several SEALs had set personal records, while team scores had exceeded previous standards across all measure categories. Colonel Morrison addressed the assembled group as they gathered for the closing ceremony. Gentlemen, over the past 2 weeks, you've demonstrated the learning ability that makes SEALs exceptional. You've also had the privilege of training under one of the military's finest marksmanship instructors. He turned toward Maria. Staff Sergeant Santos, your instruction has elevated our capabilities significantly. More importantly, you've provided us with training methods that will benefit SEAL teams for years to come. The applause from the assembled SEALs was genuine and sustained. These were warriors who appreciated excellence and recognized value when they experienced it. Torres stepped forward, speaking for the group. Staff Sergeant, when you arrived 2 weeks ago, some of us wondered what an Army instructor could teach Navy SEALs. You showed us that expertise transcends service branches and that there's always room to improve, no matter how experienced you think you are. Williams added, more than that, you showed us that real professionals are always willing to share knowledge. The techniques you taught us will make us better operators and probably save lives downrange. After the formal ceremony, individual SEALs approached Maria with personal thanks and continuing questions. The professional relationships formed during the training would extend well beyond the exercise itself. Staff Sergeant, Henderson said quietly, I wanted to thank you personally. The confidence you helped me develop with long-range shooting has changed how I approach my role as team marksman. You did the work, Henderson. I just provided some different techniques to try. Maybe, but you believed I could improve when I wasn't sure myself. That made all the difference. Rodriguez approached with a more official matter. Staff Sergeant, I've been authorized to discuss something with you. Command is interested in having you return for additional training blocks. Would you be open to that possibility? Absolutely. Working with SEALs has been professionally rewarding. Excellent. We'll coordinate through proper channels, but expect to hear from us soon. As the day wound down and SEALs began departing for their home bases, Maria reflected on the 2 weeks that had exceeded her expectations in every way. The initial challenge from Torres had seemed like a potential obstacle, but had actually provided the perfect opportunity to demonstrate capability. Thompson found her as she packed her equipment for the final time. Staff Sergeant, I wanted to ask you something. What made you so confident that first morning? Most people would have been intimidated by the challenge. Maria considered the question carefully. I've learned that capability speaks louder than claims. When someone questions your expertise, the best response is usually demonstration rather than argument. That's a good philosophy. It certainly worked here. The real key was understanding that your skepticism was professional, not personal. Elite operators should question anyone's credentials. That's how you maintain standards. As evening approached, Maria met with Colonel Morrison for a final debrief. His office overlooked the ranges where she had first proven herself and then shared her knowledge with some of the military's finest warriors. Staff Sergeant, I want to be direct about something, Morrison began. 2 weeks ago, I made judgments based on assumptions rather than evidence. That was a failure of leadership on my part. Sir, you were protecting your men's training time. That's exactly what a good commander should do. Perhaps, but I almost denied them access to exceptional instruction because of my preconceptions. Morrison leaned back in his chair. What you accomplished here goes beyond improving marksmanship scores. You showed these men that excellence can come from unexpected sources. The excellence was already there, sir. It just needed some different techniques to express it fully. Morrison smiled, spoken like a true instructor, always giving credit to the students. They spent another hour discussing the training methods that had proven most effective and planning for future collaboration. The conversation covered technical aspects of marksmanship instruction, but also broader questions about training elite performers. One thing that impressed me, Morrison said, was how you adapted your instruction to different experience levels. Teaching beginners is one skill, but teaching experts requires something entirely different. Elite students are actually easier to teach in some ways, Maria replied. They have the motivation and discipline to implement corrections immediately. The challenge is identifying refinements that actually matter at their level. As their meeting concluded, Morrison extended his hand. Staff Sergeant, it's been an honor having you here. I hope we have the opportunity to work together again soon. The honor has been mine, sir. Training SEALs has been one of the highlights of my career. Walking to her quarters for the final time, Maria passed the ranges where she had spent the past 2 weeks. The morning's challenge from Torres seemed like months ago rather than 14 days. What had begun as a test of her capabilities had evolved into a comprehensive exchange of knowledge and techniques. The next morning, as Maria prepared to depart, she found a group of SEALs gathered near the main gate. Torres, Williams, Thompson, Martinez, and several others had assembled to see her off. "We wanted to thank you properly," Torres said, presenting her with a SEAL Team Challenge coin. "This doesn't make you a SEAL, but it means we consider you part of the Brotherhood." The gesture was unexpected and deeply meaningful. Challenge coins in the special operations community represented recognition and acceptance that couldn't be earned through rank or assignment alone. "This means more than you know," Maria said genuinely. William stepped forward with a package. "We also got you something practical. It's a custom shooting mat with all our signatures and a few technical notes we thought you might find useful." The gift represented the kind of thoughtful recognition that professionals gave to respected colleagues. More than any formal evaluation or official commendation, it showed that her instruction had been valued. "Gentlemen, working with you has been extraordinary. You've made me a better instructor and a better soldier." The farewell was brief, but heartfelt. As Maria's transportation arrived, the SEALs formed an informal honor cordon, not required by protocol, but offered as a mark of respect. During the flight back to her home station, Maria reviewed the training materials she had developed during the exercise. The techniques that had proven most effective would be incorporated into her regular instruction, benefiting future students across all branches of the military. More importantly, the experience had confirmed her belief that expertise transcended organizational boundaries. The skills that made someone an effective marksman, attention to detail, systematic thinking, continuous improvement, were the same qualities that made elite operators successful in any endeavor. 3 months later, Maria received a letter from Rodriguez. Several of the SEALs who had participated in her training had distinguished themselves during subsequent deployments, with improved marksmanship directly contributing to mission success. Williams had been selected for advanced sniper training, where his newfound precision shooting skills made him a standout student. Torres had implemented several of Maria's techniques in his team's training program. Most satisfying of all, the methods she had developed were being adopted as standard curriculum across SEAL training facilities. The letter concluded with an invitation to return for an advanced instructor course, where Maria would train SEAL marksmanship instructors in the techniques that had proven so effective. Sitting in her office, reading Rodriguez's letter, Maria reflected on the career path that had brought her to this point. Every challenge, every moment of skepticism, every opportunity to prove herself had contributed to her development as both a marksman and an instructor. The morning when Torres had challenged her capabilities seemed like a lifetime ago. His skepticism had provided exactly the opportunity she needed to demonstrate that excellence could come from unexpected sources and that professional respect had to be earned rather than assumed. Most importantly, the experience had reinforced her belief that the best instruction happened when knowledge was shared freely among professionals who were committed to continuous improvement. The SEALs had taught her as much as she had taught them, creating the kind of mutual learning that elevated everyone involved. The challenge coin from the SEALs sat on her desk as a reminder that respect in the special operations community was based on performance, not position. It represented acceptance into a brotherhood that valued competence above all else. As Maria began planning her return visit to Coronado, she smiled thinking about the new challenges and opportunities that awaited. The skepticism that had initially seemed like an obstacle had instead opened doors to the most rewarding teaching assignment of her career. The colonel who had initially ridiculed her simple request to provide marksmanship training had learned the same lesson as SEALs had discovered, that expertise often came from unexpected sources, and that the best leaders remained open to learning from anyone who could make them better. In the end, that openness to learning and improvement was what made both great marksmen and great warriors.